Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today is day 36 since Summer Wells disappeared on June 15th, a Tuesday, in the Ben Hill Road area in the Beach Creek community, which is not too far from Rogersville, Tennessee. In this episode, I'm going to take you through a startling interview that Candus apparently gave to the Rogersville Review on Sunday. I believe that was Sunday the 18th of this month, so a couple of days ago. I've only just spotted it now, and there's some startling revelations, startling new versions in that particular article. I'll put a link to that article in the description. I'm also going to provide some analysis of what she says in the article, and then I'm going to provide a breaking news update for something that is coming up later this evening or later today on YouTube. If the comments for this particular video are disabled, you're welcome to head on to @CrimeRocket, that's on Twitter, and you ask questions and make your comments there, or otherwise join Patreon and join the discussion there. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So, as I said earlier, this interview that Candus gave to the Rogersville Review is really quite incredible. As far as I can see, it was only posted about an hour ago. The title of the article is "Summer Wells' Mom Pleads, Just Bring Her Back," right? And so I'm going to read to you from the article. It starts off just with Candus basically saying, bring her back, as if she's addressing the abductor, and it refers to Candus pleading on the late afternoon in regards to her daughter, who's been missing 5 weeks ago. And the time has now changed again to that she sort of vanished within 5 minutes of last being seen. So it's gone now from 2 minutes to 5. And what is really interesting is Candus provides another version of events here. What's quite useful is Candus provides a backstory for her mother going to see a doctor in Kingsport. So I wasn't sure whether her mother went overnight into the hospital, and now we've got confirmation that she went into Kingsport that morning with her mother because she had an aching knee. And so this is a quote from the article, quoting Candus. "We went to Gatlinburg and the boys accidentally kept tripping over her sore knee," Candus said. "She had an artificial knee replaced, and if you twist it the wrong way, it pops out and it hurts really bad. And she couldn't figure out why it wouldn't stop hurting after a while, so I took her to the ER that morning," end quote. And I think the thing that really comes up again and again is that Candus was in pain. Candy was in pain. The grandma was suffering from pain, and she obviously would have needed something for her pain. Well, what? Which medication? Then Candy was taken to Holston Valley by Candus, and Candus and Summer then went to visit friends in Kingsport, and they described them as family friends. And although they're not really named here at this particular part of the story, Candus says, quote, "They invited me over to sit at their house while I waited for my mom to get done, so we weren't sitting in the hot truck. So I went there," Candus said. And do you notice there's now a new element to the story, the hot truck? So in Candus's version, she goes on to say that she was sitting and then her mother called to come and get her. And if that's true, then there should be a timestamp for that call. And then she said the 15-year-old son of her friend asked to go along. So from there to go and pick up her mother, the grandma, the 15-year-old apparently went along. And so what this is implying is that the 15-year-old was present when they went to pick up the grandma, but that the grandma then was also present at the swimming hole. That's implied. So Candus says, quote, "I went and picked her up, and then we drove all the way across town and dropped her prescription off. They said it'd be about 30 minutes at the most." So we were like, well, instead of sitting in the car where it's hot, there's that word again. And she emphasized it. She says, it was baking hot. We'll just go to Warriors and let Summer swim for a while. Like I said, we weren't even planning on going swimming or fishing or anything, Candus said. So she's trying to make out as though there was no plan or idea. It was just random. It was just on impulse that they went swimming, right? And I just want to emphasize that this is the third time that she's mentioned hot. And so theoretically, she could be implicating the vehicle in being somehow responsible for what happened to Summer. And we're going to deal with that in a moment, the likelihood of that being the case. So according to the article, they went to Warriors Path State Park and let Summer and the boys swim in the cove just south of the park's horse stables. And so according to Candus's version, they swam 15 or 20 minutes in the water, run a little bit of energy out instead of sitting in the truck. Once again, there's this reference to sitting in a truck, right? And, possibly getting hot from sitting in the truck. The article then refers to speculation in social media about what happened after this and whether Summer went under the water and whether the boy did anything to save her. But Candus, according to the Rogersville Review, said that didn't happen. Summer is seen splashing in the lake and then stands up to reveal it's only waist deep. And then this is what Candus said. And I think this article may have prompted a response from Macbeth, right? Candus told the Rogersville Review, that boy lied on everything that happened because the place I was at, there was no rocks. She didn't slide on no rocks and fall in the water. She wasn't under the water for 20 seconds or more like he said. That was just a bunch of lies he made up. I don't know why he did that. So this is a really strong statement from Candus, basically saying, saying it's my word against his. What he's saying isn't true, and what I'm saying is true. And I think the only person who can kind of verify it either way is Grandma. And so far, Grandma, as I said in my previous video, is maintaining her silence. Well, for how much longer? For how much longer will she? For how much longer can she? So this is another quote from the Rogersville Review of what Candus told them. She said, there was no incident at all. That don't even make no sense why he would even say that. And the video that I took is the same, exact time that they were in the water playing. Apparently Candus also said, if Summer had fallen, she'd jump right back up. That's what don't make no sense to me at all. There's so many rumors and lies going around, none of it even makes sense. Couch police, that's what I call them, end quote. Now what's quite interesting in this particular statement is she's saying if Summer had fallen, she jumped right back up, which is kind of a concession that she may have fallen. A question I've had for quite a while is, and I don't know whether this boy can clear it up, whether Macbeth can provide clarity, could Summer swim? Was Summer, this 5-year-old little girl, had she had swimming lessons, was she able to swim? Could Summer swim? Now, in this particular version of events, Candus doesn't really say exactly how long they were at the swimming hole, just that after the swim they went back across Fort Henry Drive to Walgreens and then they stopped at a grocery store. Now, the question is really, did this happen before the swim or after the swim, these quick stops? And what was actually purchased at these grocery stores? Was it just a prescription that was picked up, or was something like twisted tea picked up and then they headed to the swimming hole? One would like to know. One wonders what the CCTV would show in that respect. Anyway, this is another statement from Candus. She says, quote, we went back and picked up my mom's prescription and went to Priceless. I dropped off the boy after Priceless and we came home. And then me and my mom, the boys were in watching YouTube like they always do. My mom says, let's rearrange and plant the flowers. She goes, well, we know the boys aren't going to help us. I know Summer will. So I yelled for Summer. She was in the house with the boys. She comes out and she was planting flowers with us, Candus said. It's a slightly different version of events. In this, she's in the house and then she comes out and then they're planting flowers. But one does wonder, wasn't Candus's knee in pain at that point to be planting flowers? Then it goes on to talk about the flowers put in planters near Grandma's camper. So that is basically putting Summer in the area of Grandma's camper when she was, just before she was last seen, right? And then another quote from the article, she put all the rocks on top. She did all the rocks herself. I presume this is referring to Summer. We went into Grandmother's after we were done. She asked Grandma for a piece of candy. Grandma gave her a piece of candy. She told me she wanted to go back over with her brothers, so I literally walked her halfway between the camper and the house, Candus said. Now, I've seen another creator who's also a grandmother just saying, you know, how ridiculous it is to say, wow, I walked Summer, you know, a couple of feet. You know, I was really taking care of her, walking with her. Why would you even mention that? Don't you think that is odd? In her Sermon on the Mount, she says something like, I walked her all the way over. Well, it's just a couple of feet. Why would it be all the way over? And I know it's trying to stress that she's, you know, doing her job as a mother, but it's really not a all the way over kind of distance. It's just over there.
I know she didn't walk away from this property by herself or off this yard by her swing. I feel in my heart that somebody has came up here and took her, has lured her away from here. Me and my mother and her were planting flowers. And we went in after we got done washing our hands, and she got a piece of candy from Grandma, and she wanted to go back over and see her brothers. And I said, okay, and I walked her all the way over to the porch. And I watched her walk into the kitchen where the boys were watching TV.
So there's possibly another discrepancy here. You might say it's nitpicking, and maybe it is nitpicking, but I've heard different versions that the boys were on the internet, that the boys are watching TV, now it's the boys are watching YouTube. And you might say, well, all three of those things are the same thing. Well, why not then say that from the beginning? And so in this version, Summer goes into the house and then she actually walks over into the house even after Summer's gone in, and she yells at her children, her boys. She says, watch Summer, I'll be right back. I've got to fix Mom's knee brace, right? So that is, I guess, her alibi is that she, after leaving Summer with them, then goes back to Grandma and also tells the boys where she's going to be. Do you think Summer would do that? Do you think Summer would say, I'm going back out there to do X, Y, Z while they're watching YouTube? Anyway, she goes on to say, quote, I was standing right there at the camper. I was over there fixing it, meaning the knee brace. Literally, you can see my house from the camper door. She did not walk back out that front door. In this version, what she's trying to say is that she was vigilant, that she was alert, that she was taking care of Summer, that she didn't do anything wrong, that Summer was in her care when all of this happened. In this account to the Rogersville Review, she says that she estimated that it took maybe 2 to 5 minutes to fix her mom's brace. So she goes on to say, I went down there, meaning the basement, and I searched. I looked everywhere I could. Then I went through the house and kept calling for her, yelling for her, everything. I came out here yelling for her, everything else, and she was nowhere. So I called Don because I was freaking out, Candus said. There's nothing here in this particular part of the statement where she says to the boys, help look for Summer, or are you sure you didn't see anything or anything like that? And then it refers to Don, Summer's father, was installing drywall at a job site in Jonesboro at the time. And she apparently told him over the phone, I can't find Summer, get home now, right? And Don's response was call 911. Now, one thing that is easy to miss with this version of events is that it sounds like Summer goes missing, Candus immediately searches for her. When she can't find her, she immediately calls Don, and Don immediately says, call 911. So it all happens in a stream of deliberation, in a stream of urgency with conviction, right? There's no delay, there are no time gaps, but when you look at the time that she originally said that Summer disappeared, 5:30, and the time that Candus called 911, that's already an hour that has passed. And it doesn't sound like, from what she's saying here, that she looked around for very long, certainly looking in the house. Another thing that's quite interesting is she doesn't talk about looking anywhere outside. Do you notice? Now, she does apparently say before the cops even came out, meaning she'd called 911 when they were on the way, she then went down and told her neighbors, Summer's missing, will you help me look? Just in case she did wander off. So now there's a little bit of a concession that she could have wandered off, right? Which is different to what they said on camera, saying she would never wander off, right? And then she does say, but I knew in the back of my mind she's never wandered off. She never went nowhere without me. She'll ask to do something before she even goes. And she's scared to go in the woods herself because we've told her time and again because of the bears and snakes. Now, I'm not going to deal with the remainder of this article right here because there's something else I want to get through. What I do want to talk about is that there's no sign or symptom of an abductor. So there's nothing from her, what she's told us so far, that would lead you to think that suspecting an abductor would make sense. It would, that there would be a signal that would take her thinking naturally in that direction. And it could be the sound of a car approaching or leaving. It could be hearing the dogs barking, right? It could be the sound of a scream from Summer, and there's none of that. Something else just to mention about this interview to the Rogersville Review is that Candus talks about the TBI questioning her. She says, they asked me the same thing, wanting me to run through my whole timeline of my day. They did that like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, you guys still don't get it. If I was going to lie, I would have to think about it. It just comes out. I don't have to sit here and think about what I did. I know what I did. I just spit it out to you 20,000 times, Candus said. So you have a similar situation to in the Chris Watts case, going through the events over and over again, trying to find inconsistencies, trying to find tailoring of the narrative. And she goes on then after that to say, quote, a liar has to think of something. I passed my polygraph test and everybody's like, oh, you failed. No, I didn't fail. The first time I did it, they really couldn't do it with me because they threw me in the back of a squad car like I did something wrong and then hauled me up there. I was already distressed over Summer being missing, and then they did that to me. So that just made more fuel to the fire and made me more upset. So by the time I got there, I was crying and shaking and just couldn't do it, Candus said. So they told me they'll give me a few days to calm down and get some sleep. I don't know what you guys think of that. Do you believe her? Elsewhere in the article, Candus acknowledges that the TBI don't believe that Summer was abducted. It's also confirmed that there were 8 dogs on the property. I've heard someone say 6 and someone else say 20. And according to Candus, they don't bark much. So I'm not going to take it further than that in terms of this article. As I'm sure you've picked up, it's an excellent article. It goes into such incredible depth. It's just a pity we can't actually see the interview. But now I want to deal with one of the most important details in this statement made by Candus. She brings up how hot the day was, and that that it was baking hot, which is why it's the title of this video, and also that they didn't want to be sitting in the car because it was so hot, right? Well, it wasn't hot. It was something like 78, 79 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 26 degrees Celsius. I'm not saying that that's cold or cool. It's warm. but it's not really hot. You might get hot after maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours sitting in a car like that with all your windows closed, but that's definitely not hot. Certainly not as hot as it can get in Tennessee. And I think one's got to bear that in mind, is these are people who are used to the heat. And was that day a particularly hot day? The answer is no, it wasn't a particularly hot day. It was a couple of degrees unusually cooler than usual, which is strange. Now, you might disagree with me on that and say, no, 78, 79, that is pretty hot, and I totally understand where Candus was coming from, fair enough. But then why is Summer dressed in long trousers and also a sweater that's got long sleeves and kind of a hoodie? If it was so hot, why is she dressed as though it's not that hot? What's the reason for that? If it was so hot, why does Summer not look flushed? Why are her cheeks not red? Why is there not a bead of sweat or just a little bit of a glimmer of perspiration on her forehead? Why don't we see that? And that was one of the big clues I meant to highlight in a previous video, was that is why you can see the arrow pointing to the tracksuit or pointing to the sweater. It's a long sleeve sweater. Why is she wearing something like that if it is apparently warm and warm enough to swim? It doesn't make any sense, does it? In any event, this brings me to the final point, which is that there's going to be a interview with Macbeth at 6 p.m. CST, that's Central Standard Time. I'm not sure whether Mountain Standard Time is an hour later than that or earlier than that. I think it's possibly later than that. I think the time is midnight GMT or in the UK, if you guys want to catch it. I'll put a link to the interview with Macbeth, conducted by a veteran detective, a veteran investigator, is on the YouTube channel, The Interview Room. So I'll put a link to that. Look out for that in a couple of hours. Should be quite something. It's one of the big scoops, I think, in this particular case. So I'm sure many of us will be watching it and taking notes and providing some analysis of some of the statements made. But in particular, what you want to know is his version of this statement that Candus has contradicted. You know, is it true or not? And let me quote from that one more time. Candus said, quote, "That boy lied on everything that happened because the place I was at, there was no rocks. She didn't slide on no rocks and fall in the water. She wasn't under the water for 20 seconds or more, like he said. There was just a bunch of lies he made up. I don't know why he did that. There was no incident at all. They don't even make no sense why he would even say that. And the video that I took is the same exact time that they were in the water playing." And then she also says, if some had fallen, she'd jump right back up. So we also want to know, whether he can provide any clarity on the timeline. How long were they at the waterhole? Was Grandma there? What happened when they went to fetch the prescription? Does he know what the prescription was for? So hopefully we'll get some answers, some light in these sort of shadowy areas. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.